So, a few weeks ago, I put out a video entitled My Favorite Anime Manga Endings of All Time. There were lots of great comments on that, and people seemed to enjoy it, and someone then asked me, would you be able to do the same thing for video games? To which I said, I'd love to. You guys know me, I love yapping and talking about video games, specifically video game narratives, all elements of video games, but I love talking about the narratives and the feel and the immersion of them, so I'd love to talk about my favorite video game endings. And so that's what I'm here to do, but the one caveat to this is I have more endings to talk about that I love in video games than I do in anime manga. I don't know if that means that the video will be longer. That actually might mean it's shorter because I have more to run through and I might not talk in depth about them as much, but we'll see. So in that video, I had 10 of my favorites. So 10 on the list of my favorite anime manga endings, like the cream of the crop, the best ones I've ever experienced. Actually, there was 11 because someone in the comments mentioned Mawaru Penguin Drum, and that would be in my very favorite endings. So there was 11 favorite endings there, and then 7 or 8 honorable mentions, something like that. In this one, I have a lot of honorable mentions and 20 cream of the crop favorite endings, and who knows, maybe I've forgotten one or two that you guys will remind me of. For video games, there are just a lot of great endings for video games. Not to say that there isn't for anime, but I guess more that resonate with me. Oh, I've also played more video games than I think I've watched anime, so that definitely helps. And there have been more video games have been with me at formative times in my life more than anime has, and I think that also plays a factor. I don't know. Anyway, let's get to it. Some honorable mentions. That these are endings that are fantastic, that I adore, but maybe I don't adore the game as a whole, so it doesn't quite stick in my mind as much, or maybe there are some things about it that limit it from being a masterful ending, or maybe it's just like a really consistent, I'll describe which is which, but a really consistent experience that rounds out the experience really well, but doesn't give that extra oomph that goes, oh, this is a masterpiece, this is one of my favorite endings of all time. One of these is The Last of Us. I think it's an unbelievable ending. I think it's really, really good. I love what it does for Joel. I love what it does for his character. It's kind of solidified him as my favorite character in The Last of Us. And again, I'm going to be talking about these endings vaguely. I don't intend to spoil much at all, but I'm going to be speaking vaguely. But if you don't want spoilers, I think you're probably good. I don't intend to be explicit with what happens. But yeah, The Last of Us, I think maybe The Last of Us is a very good game that I think is great. But it's not a favorite of mine. It's not something that I really think about a lot. It's not something I'm crazy passionate about. I have no complaints about this ending, but I think if maybe I felt stronger about The Last of Us as a whole, it might be in that upper cream of the crop, best ever class. But as it is, it's still incredible, and I think it's great, so I'm mentioning it here. Metaphor ReFantasio, just all-around incredible ending with the final boss, with the thematic conclusions they're in. This is really close to being one of my all-time favorite endings. It's unbelievable. Xenoblade 3 has such an emotional, unbelievable ending. It's my second favorite sequence of the series is the last few minutes of Xenoblade. In the game is the last few minutes of Xenoblade 3. Unreal. I adore it. Then I have Paper Mario 1-3. All 3 endings to the first 3 Paper Mario games I think are really good. They tie up the experience really well with holistically with a nice little bow. It makes your heart feel warm. It makes you emotional in certain ways. It just makes your heart full for these series, and all 3 Paper Mario games end very, very well. I would say so in a bit of a different way with Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium has a great ending that didn't wow me as much as certain elements of, I guess, the main climax or other elements of the game, but it's really good, and so I felt it worth mentioning. A similar deal to Paper Mario is how I feel about Pokemon, the Johto games, the Hoenn games, the Sinnoh games, the Black and White games, so the Unova games, and the Sun and Moon. I just think they're really good endings that tie the whole experience together really well, and I feel very strongly about them, and it's just, it allows the whole experience to follow through beautifully. A couple of Trails entries in here, which were actually very close to being in the upper echelon, but I kind of wanted to make a top 20, not an unranked top 20. But one here would be Trails to Azure, The Legend of Heroes Trails to Azure. Incredible story for that game, incredible ending, some all-timer scenes in there. Some people don't like some of the ways that the characters go, some character directions. I think it's incredible every step of the way. I think it's very intelligent and creative what they do with the character writing. I've talked about it in my Discord. If you're curious about that, I could find that and copy and paste that if you want to know my thoughts on the Trails to Azure ending. But I think it's really bold, while also tying up a lot of things really well, being a great emotional climax, being the payoff we've been wanting for 2 huge games. Just, I love Trails to Azure's ending, but my favorite ending in Trails, also shout out to Cold Steel 4 and Reverie, actually. And Daybreak, you know what? All three of those have great endings. But my favorite ending in Trails is the ending to Trails in the Sky 3rd chapter. Oh, this is maybe my number 21 or 22 on the list. It's so unbelievable. I adore how it ties a bow on the saga, on all the characters and their journey so far and the relationships they're in, on Kevin as a person, and this point in his life and how he's going to progress, on Reese and their dynamic and their ties with Rufina. Just so good. So good. Another one that's incredible to me is The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. One of the best Zelda endings, without a doubt. No doubt in my mind, no question in my mind. Unbelievable ending. And let me just double check. Yeah, I'm going to include Ocarina of Time with this too. Ocarina of Time has a great ending. Phenomenal stuff. Alan Wake 2, really incredibly abstract with the things it does with its ending. Super creative, super innovative. Adore the things it does with the themes of a spiral, or you know what I mean. And the way it encourages another playthrough to look at, I guess, elements of what it was setting up and what it does within the structure of the story and the themes, and oh, it's so good. It's so good. I was floored when I saw how Alan Wake 2 ended with my playthrough of it a few months ago. Right on cue, actually, another great ending I love is Chrono Crosses. I've described Chrono Cross as a game that is incredibly flawed. So unbelievably flawed. But my god, the concepts in that game, the positives of it, the highs it hits with the aesthetics and atmosphere and background art and presentation, and these hefty ideas that are communicated in the most powerful ways possible. And that all comes together so beautifully in the ending. The dynamic between Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger is really interesting, because I think Chrono Trigger is definitely the better game. It definitely means, I think it's better and it means more to me, and it's in my top 20-ish fiction of all time, whereas Chrono Cross is in and around the top 100. So I adore both, but I like Chrono Trigger better, and it means more to me. However, there is something that Chrono Cross does that Chrono Trigger does not. I think about Chrono Cross's ideas and the way those ideas are executed more than I think about any of the concepts in Chrono Trigger. It makes me think, it makes me introspect, it makes me kind of philosophize a bit. It's so heady, it's so high concept, it's so profound. And whereas Chrono Trigger has all that as well, this has it on another level. You know, to me, the characters in Chrono Trigger, I prefer the theming. Sorry, not the theming. I'm talking about the theming. I think the theming is the one thing that Chrono Cross maybe does better. But I think the plot in Chrono Trigger is better. I think the characters are. I prefer the dynamics, and the characterization, and the prose as well, I prefer a little bit. So I prefer almost every element of story in Chrono Trigger to Chrono Cross. But Chrono Cross hits some highs that Chrono Trigger just isn't as good at, simply. And I love that dynamic. Chrono Trigger is really tight and polished and has very few flaws, if any, and is just so cohesive and rich and this beautiful, holistic package. Whereas Chrono Cross is arguably a bit more ambitious. It's a bit more unbridled. It goes places that Chrono Trigger does not attempt to, and it fails more as a result. But when it succeeds, oh boy, that's why it's one of my favorite video games of all time. Not like a top 5 or top 10 video game, but a favorite, and one that's aged well over the last 6-7 months. Don't say anything, and will continue to. And that I'll always talk about in these sort of conversations about video games that mean a lot to me, that are incredibly impressive creative works. Anyways, that was a digression. All that's accentuated in the ending of Chrono Cross. Unreal. I would also say FF Tactics, Final Fantasy Tactics, has an incredible Shakespearean, beautiful ending. Beautiful. So well thought out, so beautifully presented in the prose, in the dialogue, in the music. Ties together all the themes really well, just all around. Beautiful ending. Final Fantasy Tactics. Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. Is that game messy? Hell yeah. Does it have lots of flaws? Hell yeah, it does. But my god, the amount of tears I have shed over that ending. That is one of the best endings to a video game ever. One of the best Final Fantasy endings. It's captured my heart and soul and imagination and emotions from the moment I saw it. And oh my god, it just, if you know, you know. Crisis Core, man. It does things emotionally out of this world. Unbelievable ending. Next I'll say Final Fantasy 15. Very similar thoughts. Final Fantasy 15 I think is very flawed. I've talked about it in my Final Fantasy series overview video I did a couple weeks ago. But what it succeeds at, which is the main protagonist, the core 4, it is masterful at. And it gets that across so well throughout the game, and it nails that home. With the ending, I'm getting a little teary and I'm just getting a little choked up thinking about it, and specifically the last scene. Wow, I'm actually tearing up. Yeah, man, that last scene is so special. So special. I really do think fondly about Final Fantasy 15. I really do. The things it does well are out of this world. Final Fantasy 15. My favorite Danganronpa game. Danganronpa game. Danganronpa V3 has, to me, an ending that is very bold. I've talked about, in my video about anime-manga endings, how certain endings are sort of bow-tie endings, whereas others are more abstract, more bold, more risky, a little more open-ended, and a little more interpretive. Danganronpa V3 is like that. And for that reason, I think it's volatile, and some really don't like it. I love it. I love it, what it does with the concept and the premise. I love how creative it is. I love what it does for the characters. Danganronpa V3 is an unbelievable game. I'd love to re-experience it sometime. And the ending's unreal. Just really quickly, if I go through the ones I've gone through already with the bow tie or abstract ending stuff I did, The Last of Us to me is a bit of both. Disco Elysium is kind of bow tie-y. Metaphor to me is a bit of both. Xenoblade 3 is actually a bit of both. Paper Mario 1-3 to me is quite bow tie-y. Same with Pokemon. Same with Trails to Azure, but it is quite bold in some things it does. Third chapter, bit of both. Wind Waker, I would say, is pretty bow tie-y. Alan Wake 2 is very abstract. Chrono Cross, very abstract. FF Tactics it goes out on a limb for sure, but I would say it's pretty, in its own way. No, you know what? It's pretty risky in certain ways. It's pretty bold. Crisis Core, bit of both. Final Fantasy 15, bit of both. Danganronpa, abstract. Celeste is an incredible game, and to me, its ending is it's one of the best out there. It puts everything together so beautifully. Mother 3 has an unreal ending, follows through the narrative prior. incredibly beautifully. And yeah, I'd also, the last couple for the honorable mentions I'd include is God of War Valhalla, my favorite God of War work that I've seen. Deltarune's chapter endings, which aren't really endings, but they're so good I had to mention them. And Red Dead Redemption. Very strong with what Red Dead Redemption does with its ending, and it is quite bold with what it does as well, and it's very interpretive, and it has you guessing about what it's trying to say with it. It could go several ways. But yeah, Red Dead Redemption, beautiful ending. Very gutting ending. Now for the main list. There are 20 here, unranked, and some of them I'm kind of cheating with. First thing I'll mention is Yakuza, the series in general. Now, whether you're getting something peak or something that is a mix of peak and abyss, Kiwami 2, Kiwami, Yakuza, you are never going to forget that series' endings. They are unforgettable, and I would always have to mention the endings. Basically, every game has an unforgettable ending in one way or another. I would say Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2, 3 and 4 all have endings that are at least have some really great stuff, but are all mixed. But I would say the endings to Yakuza 0, Yakuza 5, 6, 7, Gaiden, and Infinite Wealth, and Pirate Yakuza as well, actually, are all incredibly bold. I would say Yakuza 0 has the closest thing to a bow tie ending, maybe Yakuza 6 as well. But regardless, they are all masterful. Very bold, most of them. Very incredible. Some of the best endings to any story you're ever going to see. So I wanted to say Yakuza in terms of consistently pulling out masterful endings. Hopefully, we'll see the same with Stranger Than Heaven. Next one I want to mention... Oh, and Lost Judgment and Judgment both have really great endings as well. So just RGG endings in general. The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. It's interesting because let me start with Twilight Princess. Let's try Twilight Princess. It's interesting because it's quite a bow tie ending, but the things it does with the themes is really abstract and really interesting. And to me, phenomenally compelling, but very wistful, very sentimental, very in keeping with the tone of the game. Twilight Princess is very mesmerizing and immersive and quiet and solemn and contemplative. And the ending is, the final boss is bombastic. It's one of the best final bosses I've ever seen. But it ends with a hush, as the rest of the game is. Very understated, and I love that. And a very emotional goodbye as well. Majora's Mask is really interesting because it has an incredibly bold story, but the ending is quite bow tie, which is fun. And it is one of the best video game endings I've ever seen. I would also say Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, I just put them together, Re-Trilogy in general. Two of the best endings I have ever seen. I've gone into detail as to how they are gut-wrenching, emotional, evocative, thrilling, cinematic, beautiful endings in my multi-hour videos on them on the main channel, so check those out if you want. They are the epitome, the personification of bold, abstract, risky endings. And we'll see with Revelation if they all pay off. I think they will. I'm very confident they will. But regardless, they are one of my first examples of a masterful, risky, bold, abstract ending. Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth both. Two unbelievable endings. Continuing on from Final Fantasy, I love the ending to Final Fantasy VI. From the masterful, one of the best boss fights in all of video game history, to the wonderful, sprawling end credit sequence, just encapsulating all the characters and their journeys, and ending with a emotional flourish. Wow. It was one of my first JRPGs. No, it was my first JRPG other than, I guess, Pokemon and Paper Mario, if that counts. It was one of the most formative games for me. It was my first Final Fantasy. It kind of ushered me into exploring the medium more, and that ending stuck with me from the moment I saw it, and continues to. Final Fantasy VI. Whew. So we've gone through, how many? 5? Yakuza, RGG. Twilight Princess, Majora's Mask, Final Fantasy VII Retrilogy, Final Fantasy VI. Next, Final Fantasy X, straight up one of the best endings to any story I have ever experienced. The way it ties together all the character journeys, the incredible emotions, the way it pays off everything, the themes of one of the greatest settings in video game history, the character relationships that have been built up throughout the whole time, how emotional, how gutting it can be. I personally, sometimes I have these evenings where I just search up, it's been a year, let me search it up, and I just search up Final Fantasy X ending reactions or final streams of it, just to revisit, to see people react to them, because this ending is one of the greatest. It has such utter hope of breaking cycles of oppression and systematic oppression, cultural oppression, and tragedy. There is triumph there, but there is also immense melancholy through loss and grieving. And the conflicting elements of how real that is, and how we progress in our lives, how with every success there is always loss. Oh. FF10 is amazing. And that ending, my god, it is in the conversation for the best video game ending I've ever seen, without a doubt. And it's a mix of, I'd say it's pretty bold. FF6 is the epitome of bow tie endings. FF10 is, I would say it's quite bold. Then another Final Fantasy, another one of the best video game endings of all time. Maybe I would say FF10 has a very slightly better, but my god, the way the ending sequence of Final Fantasy IX is right up there with the very best in video games. Like I said, Final Fantasy X maybe has a tiny leg up on it, maybe if I had to choose. And Final Fantasy X is in the conversation for the best ending in anything almost, but so is FF9, just like, I guess, to the tiniest, slightly lower extent. Yeah, it never fails to make me cry, that ending, and how it really sums up a lot of the beautiful themes of FF9 and the character journeys we've just experienced through one of the greatest casts ever, with the beautiful, unbelievable music, and such a beautiful chronicling of an unforgettable journey, and what it means to live, and what it means to have lived, and leave a mark on the world through your connections, and to understand your place in the world, understand who you are as a person, and understand your purpose, and live to the fullest, no matter how long you live. With that in mind, in that spirit, unforgettable. Next, I would say, is an ending that is imperfect because some elements of it are maybe not... There are some threads that are left a little bit dangling due to this game being a little bit unfinished, but no less impressive, no less masterful. The ending to 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim gets me incredibly emotional for what it has to say about the triumph of the human spirit, the almost eclectic entropic nature of individuality and experience, and how that can lead to different paths and different choices in different shards. How it gets together the most ambitious video game I've ever seen. The video game plot I've ever seen, at least. And puts it together in a cohesive way, brings all the themes together, presents it in a beautiful way. The music really always gets me teary-eyed, and the final scene just nails it all home and gives you such hope and catharsis and pathos. It's so good. Metal Gear Solid 2. One of the greatest video game twists of all time, one of the most shocking moments in fiction I've ever experienced, which is immortalized on stream. The stream VODs are out there on my VOD channel, but then it coalesces, and because the game doesn't end there's still at least a couple hours after that twist. It coalesces with this incredible celebration of the human spirit, of raw humanity, of passing on lessons, learned lessons to those who matter. The lessons that matter to those who matter. The beauty of memetics and how, yeah, you could make some mistakes in your life. There are flaws and there are triumphs, and that is the human experience. But all you can do is take what you can from the positives and negatives and all that you've learned, and carry it forward to those who follow, and how important that is. Incredible ending. Very emotional. Very emotional. It's just a triumph of humanity, a rallying call of the beauty of there's lots of devastation in the world, in the state of the world, and that game, Metal Gear Solid 2, really is a warning sign about things that are happening to this day, but there is so much beauty, nonetheless, still in the world, still in the human spirit, and through that we can fight back. Metal Gear Solid 3. One of the most emotional final confrontations, really bringing together one of the best relationships in gaming, one of the most indescribable relationships in gaming, and ending with one of the most brutal, gutting, emotional, tragic sequences, not just the last scene, but the sequence leading up to that as well, in video game history. Metal Gear Solid 3 has one of the best endings out there, and I cannot wait to see how it'll lead into Metal Gear Solid 4. Maybe even if not chronologically, thematically, maybe. We'll see. Sorry, I just realized I didn't include Sekiro. But the different endings of Sekiro, it would be somewhere on this list, whether it be the main list or the honorable mentions, it would be somewhere here. And Sekiro, through its differing endings, and how they coalesce with one another, and what they mean, and how they each put together the piece of the puzzle that is the character work, the character piece that is Sekiro, the thematic piece that is the story there. Because Sekiro, even in spite of being this wonderful exploration of a beautiful setting, having the best gameplay you're ever likely to see, it is also a character piece, a very, very in-depth, experimental, abstract character study. You can check out my video on Sekiro on my main channel if you're interested in that. But it is unbelievable at that, and all the different endings are a cohesive part of that. I would say the same of Cyberpunk as well. Both which I kind of forgot to mention in this. Next up, I'd say Xenoblade. I don't think the ending does anything super crazy, but I think it's just one of the best ways of following through with one of my favorite video game stories of all time, in a way that leaves your heart feeling full, leaves you smiling, maybe tears coming down your cheeks. The song that plays, the credits, it is unforgettable to me, and it's one of my very favorite video game endings. It makes me very emotional. And to add on to that, two endings that I think kind of complete one another is the ending to Nier Automata with arguably the best end credit sequence of all time, in addition with all the separate endings that are, once again, cohesive with one another, and same with Nier Replicant, and the emotional flourish at the end of that, and how you can just thread the needle and find the hope that feels impossible in both endings, and how they interact with one another, how it uses the medium so unbelievably well, how it gives these characters the conclusion that, in some cases, they deserve, and just how it just brings everything together in such an incredible creative way, in such an emotional way. The Nier series, masterful. Expedition 33, Clair Obscur Expedition 33, through its combination of very gutting, emotional, tragic, horrifying endings in some ways. This is a tragedy. Both endings lead to horrific stuff, but in a way it's still fulfilling. Tragedies are still fulfilling, and to me, it is the most powerful, affecting, profound ending to a video game through the combination of both endings that I've ever seen. Again, if you want to see my musings on both endings, I have several videos on the series. Specifically, you could check out, with regards to the ending, my video on Verso and my video on Mael. But both endings are masterful to me. Absolutely masterful, in so many ways. Red Dead Redemption 2. Everything I said about Red Dead Redemption 1, just dialed up a little bit more. Really extremely powerful. That last confrontation, that last scene with Dutch. Oh my god. Um, the way it muses on the journey of Arthur and all that's happened and how John fits into that, how it all comes together, these songs, the presentation, the beautiful visuals, how it leaves you with a bit of darkness and a bit of fear at the end. It just does everything that you want the story to do and follows through an unbelievable journey in a way that is loyal to the quality up to that point. We're coming to the last few. The Great Ace Attorney, very bow tie ending, but very affecting, incredibly moving, incredibly hype in a lot of ways, and just does all that I wanted it to do to just give us the perfect ending that we would have wanted. One of my favorite bow tie endings, The Great Ace Attorney, to end one of my favorite video game narratives of all time, in a way that somehow doesn't really disappoint at all. I really was fearing that maybe by the end it wouldn't really follow through with the hype, or the emotions, or the drama, or the beauty, but it really does. Silent Hill 2, absolutely gutting, upsetting, disturbing ending, but each ending flows into each other very, very well, gives you a cohesive picture of what the story is all about, and gives you the picture of James Sunderland and what it kind of wants to get across about grief and loss and the very human negative impulses that can result from that. And how monstrous that can be. It's one of the most affecting endings I've ever seen, and it's very, very, very powerful. It's one of my favorite. Undertale. Through its differing roots, through how powerful each of them are, how each of them are so unbelievably masterful in and of themselves, but even more so if you put them all together. Undertale, it does things that only video games can. It is a shining triumph and example of video game narratives, and all the different roots and how they coalesce is so, so unbelievable. And the last two I'll do. Again, this is in no order. I have no number 1, I have no number 20. These are all just my cream of the crop favorites. But the last two I have. One of them is the DLC for Lies of P. Lies of P Overture. I really like Lies of P's ending. I think it's very, very good. But specifically, Lies of P Overture's ending is out of this world. The way that it was able to put together this incredibly, incredibly emotional narrative, incredibly thrilling last fight, coalescing with these just gut-wrenching emotions that have you feeling so much for these characters that you really didn't know that well until this expansion. The powerful way it cuts off and then leads into the main story, all that it the incredible layer of emotion it adds to all of it. It is so pathos-driven. It is so full of heart. The characters within it are so good. It's one of the best DLCs I've ever played. Ever. And what it adds to the Lies of P narrative, what it is, how it's made me connect more thoroughly with the Lies of P narrative, it's without doubt one of the best video game endings. And the last one I've already talked about, Chrono Trigger. One of the best bow tie endings you are ever likely to see. And with the culmination of saying goodbye to this quest that was grand and epic and sprawling throughout all of time and throughout all these different settings and these to hell and back you've been with this crew. That's so beautifully emphasized in the end as you have to say goodbye. And they, it's getting me choked up. And they have to say goodbye to each other and return to their respective homes. And how it all coalesces with this end credit sequence with one of my favorite songs of all time. There are several different end credit sequences, but I'm thinking of the canon one. Let me find that last song. Hold on. I'm having trouble finding it. Hold on. To Faraway Times. This one. Wow. Oh, this is the epitome of a beautiful bow tie, everything, just everything buttoned up, polished, goodbye to these characters. That just makes you want to kind of go through the adventure again. It's emotional, it's pathos-driven. It is such an amazing example of a video game ending that ties everything together so cohesively and leaves you wanting, kind of just wanting to go through the whole thing again, but at the same time feeling so full and whole. Masterful. Chrono Trigger's a masterpiece. And video games and stories are a masterpiece. I hope you've enjoyed me gushing about all these different video game endings. I know there were a lot of them. There were so many. I kind of just went through a list of maybe 50, maybe not 50, maybe 35 to 40. I don't know. I didn't count. But all of them, every single one I mentioned, is thoroughly, thoroughly worth everyone's time, that I find so much meaning in, that I could spend any given day just rotting my brain over, for different reasons. So yeah, this is the follow-up to my favorite anime manga endings with my favorite video game endings. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to share your favorite video game endings, or maybe for games I haven't played, some video game endings you love, or obviously without spoilers, or maybe if you think I forgot one, maybe I have. Could have happened. Either way, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.